Hey guys, welcome to The Grey Escape. I'm Natalie Gray, and I will tell you all about today's episode right after this. Before we get into things, if you have to send money overseas for any reason, anywhere, don't pay extortionate exchange rates when you can go to thegreyescape.com and click on any of the links that offer you a free transaction up to £500 or your currency equivalent, which is a lot. So trust me, it's way cheaper than doing it via PayPal. I did lots of research when I was coming back from the UK to America, and it's the best rates that I found. So go to thegreyescape.com. There's links all over the place, and I am giving you a £500 or your currency equivalent free international currency conversion. You're welcome. I know, an unusual gift, but hey, thanks for listening to the show. These are the kind of perks you get when you're in it for the long haul with the Grey Escape. So, who do I have on the show today? A songwriter, a beautiful singer-songwriter from Southern California that I met about 2.5 years ago in Colorado when we were at a songwriting conference. And this artist went up on stage in a jam-packed room full of people and started to talk about mental health in a very vulnerable and open way that I immediately connected to and kind of felt like a kindred spirit because, as you know, I'm pretty open about that stuff and becoming more and more open about it, which I think is a healthy thing for all of us. So I'm going to just get right into it. We have a great chat. So if you're listening now, we talk about stuff to do with social media and being an artist and having a trauma. And there's a surprise, not necessarily a positive surprise, but there was something about this artist that I didn't know. And boy, do we have stuff in common. So I would like to introduce the lovely and beautiful Kendall Renee. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Oh my God, you look so fit.
Thank you.
You look so
I
fit.
was literally just eating candy.
Do you have the same mic as me?
I have a Yeti.
Oh, okay. It's got
Kind
the
of,
big
to
phone.
be honest, a piece of crap, but we're making it work.
Now, I'm just looking at your, I'm thinking of your lighting. Do you, because you're quite shadowed.
Yeah, it's glasses. Because I have a ring light. Does that make it any better?
What about if you ever so slightly opened the blinds that are on your left?
Okay, wait, let me try this. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that is actually, yeah,
it's alive.
Yeah, that's better.
I love your t-shirt.
Oh, my Martin t-shirt.
Team Martin all the way, always.
Yeah, I'm a Martin girl for sure.
Same.
Myself.
I don't like the others. I like Martins.
What's that funny noise? I hear music. Do you?
So do I. Wait, is it my house?
Is it my phone?
It sounds like
I think it's the Zoom thing reminding me that I'm to.
Oh. No, I'm just warning you. I try to really hard to keep it quiet, but I have a dog who likes to sing the song of her people, and also the ice cream man loves to come when I'm trying to do Zooms or interviews or anything.
Oh, that's what it sounded like, was an ice cream man.
It wasn't though. He's actually not here, but he might come.
Oh, that's funny.
Drives me nuts. I'm telling you, I swear I don't know how he finds out my schedule, but every single time he appears, I'm like, shut up.
That did sound like exactly like
it totally did. That kind of sounded like the ringtone for, I don't know if it's Zoom or it's Skype.
Right.
But it sounded like one of the two.
I'll turn my input down a bit. I've got I'm on Rode for my interface today. I've got so many
Ooh.
audio interfaces. I'm
I
such an
want to
audio nerd. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to get better at that cuz I feel like as soon as quarantine happened, I knew absolutely nothing and I had to just like dive into okay, I need a mic and I need to figure out how to not have glare on my face because oftentimes with glasses, I mean, I'm sure you understand. How do you do it? How the heck?
Okay, well, I'll give you all my big secret right now. I was
Yes,
going to tell you,
please.
you get really good light if you face a window.
Okay,
So, like, you
that
have
makes
that window.
sense.
If you were to swizzle your desk around, does it happen to face, do you know what direction that window faces? If it's like south or west or
I
whatever?
have no
Okay.
idea.
Because west is not ideal because then you get the burning sun, you know.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I have a window, and depending on the time of day, I was getting all glare in my glasses, like what
Yeah,
you probably have. So I put a shower curtain up on my window.
that's
Uh,
smart.
and literally cut a shower curtain that I was going to throw away anyway. So right now, and the funny thing is with a shower curtain, if you go and buy a really expensive, fancy light filter for like a studio light, it's
Yeah.
basically a nylon fabric that is almost
Yeah,
identical to a shower curtain.
absolutely.
So I have the very poor person's light filter up
Oh,
on my
I
window.
I've done some stuff to try to sometimes like when we're filming stuff for YouTube videos or whatever, some of the things I've done, I've taken like blankets, I've taken what else did we do? One time one time one of us literally we didn't have a stand, so one of us literally just stood in with a blanket like in front of the lighting for like a good I felt so bad for my friend because it was like 20 minutes. And I was just like, you're gonna be so sore tomorrow from being like this all day. Like
That is, yeah, that's quite extreme to hold a blanket.
sometimes I'm because the sun was so iffy that day. It's hard because if you don't have like there's all this equipment, but I even like this, I spent $50 on this ring light, but I didn't know that a ring light makes me look like a zombie because of my dang glasses. So it's just like this big
Ah,
bright light, and I was like, okay, I don't want to scare anybody. So I figured out if I put it like facing behind me, it'll at least light the room. But then I always
right.
get a shadow. So I'm glad you just said that because I never would have figured that out. That
Out
makes
of
so much sense.
out of interest, open that
Yeah,
blind a little more and see if see what happens
wait.
if you open it a bit more because it was really doing well when you were open. See, I think that's nice.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
it's lighting you
Good.
very
I
nicely.
always get scared that it's gonna be like sober. Because one time I've actually it was really sad. I'm on my Mac right now. Like I have a restored Mac computer, but when I was on my other computer, my old computer, our family Dell, it turns you straight up orange.
Oh,
Like you look straight up spray tanned and it's so bad and I never know how to fix it. So and I had to like I didn't this computer crashed and I had to use it for a like interview thing I was doing. And I was just like, what do I do? And they just kept saying, like, is there any way to make you less orange? I'm like, no, I don't know what to do.
right. So
But
are you on a computer webcam now?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I'm
right.
on my Mac right now, and thankfully it's usually a lot
I'm
better
on
than
my Mac right now. My
I
MacBook.
wish I had a better like I really want to get a MacBook Air, but I'm sure everyone wants to get a MacBook Air, so
I like the MacBook Pros because they're super fast.
well, yeah, that's what I hear. I'm torn about eventually I'm going to invest in a better computer cuz this one is like a restored it just says MacBook. I don't think it's I think that's it. Um but why did you just get
Wonder if
so
mine
small?
says
How do
MacBook
I
Pro.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I swear I'm so technically challenged. It's just a mess.
I'm like, you can ask me questions because I'm quite a nerd with gear and tech
I love
stuff.
that because I'm like, send help.
I was
It's so hard.
I have a poor man. I have all these poor man's tricks, which these days
That's my thing because
I,
right, especially right now, I'm like starving artists. We need
I
and
should.
all the tricks.
Right, right. I'm just thinking as well, like, because the world's changing and we have all these kind of archaic things that we say, like poor man's tricks. Should I be saying poor person's tricks, really?
Oh yeah,
Right, right. So,
that's
but I'm
true.
still for now going to call them poor man's tricks. But for your ring light, I
Yeah.
find it quite hilarious that all these like news broadcasters and celebrities, they're doing their Zooms and they've all clearly got the ring light, you know, and you can
Yes.
see it in their glasses. And the way
Yes.
that you can avoid this
Yes.
which the patented Natalie method is with a shower cap and a piece of white paper.
No way.
Yeah, if you just put one of those cheap plastic hotel shower caps over your ring light with a piece of white paper or paper towel inside, it will take the ring out of it and just make it like a white filtered light.
Really quick. What? I gotta run to Auntie Melody's to bring her some medicine. Dad's here. Okay. I'll ask him to try to keep him quiet. Yeah, just tell the dogs not to be boisterous. Yeah, I'll get right on that. Yeah, you tell them. This is my mom. Mom, this is Natalie.
Hello. I don't know if we met. Maybe we met like 2 years ago at Durango.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. You look really familiar.
I know. I'm always there. She's like my ride or die roadie.
Good. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're always there.
Yeah. Somebody's got to be. I like your shirt. I know. I just said that. I'm like, Martin all the way. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Auntie. I'll be back. All right. Love you. Bye. You too. Okay, I'm plugging this mic back in.
I like the mom interlude. I'm going to have to work on my mom and see if she can participate in a Zoom one time.
Oh my gosh, it's the best. It's funny because everyone's always like, who's your manager? I'm like, technically I don't have one, but I have a mom that helps.
Yeah. She's probably going to be the best manager you could ever get as well.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't trust people these days. They're like taking your money and running.
There's all kinds of scary stuff, right? Yeah. Do you know the comedian Dane Cook?
That sounds really familiar. I love comedy.
He had a family member working for him, and that didn't turn out well at all.
I have a dear friend of mine that he was a child actor, a really successful one, and his family literally just like took all his money and controlled it. And it was so sad because it's like you're making money off of your kid, and then when he got old enough to control his own, they had set something up to where he couldn't. So he literally had to like move in with another friend of ours and just like sleep on their couch forever. And I'm like, that is disgusting. Like, how do you do that to like your kid?
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. Like the whole, the Britney thing, and I think Macaulay Culkin had the same sort of awful situation with his father.
It's so sad. It's like exploiting kids and then just taking like all of the money. It's like, I'm glad. I feel like everything I've ever loved in my life, especially like back when I was a figure skater, my mom was like, do you want to quit yet and go play soccer or something more? And I'm like, no, I still love it. But like my parents were never like, in figure skating, man, let me tell you, there are some families that will like literally abuse their kids if they don't like do good enough in their competition, or it's so sad. And I always used to like sneak them snacks because they weren't allowed to have like snacks. It's so sad.
I think we only need to think of Tonya Harding.
Oh
to know how bad things get in figure skating, how competitive it is.
It's so real. It scared me a lot also, just because like with my medical situation, it was so easy. It would have been so easy, and a couple times it kind of happened, but it was so scary, like not knowing, because it's so easy obviously for any of like, if they're competitive and crazy enough to like compromise something so that I end up sick and not competing or whatever. But luckily I kind of left before I got to like any national level or anything, because that would have been very scary to like, because some of these people, they're like, I'll do whatever it takes.
Well, that's one of the things that obviously I want to speak with you, because it's such a big part of your story, and also why I think you're forging yourself into such an authentic artist. And part of that is your life, what life has dealt you.
Yes. It's been a ride.
Yeah, it's been a ride. So can we, for people, because I don't even know.
Yeah.
I literally just know you have extreme food allergies. So what's the story and the journey? Like, is this something you were born with, or?
Yes, basically, sorry, I don't know why my hair just got stuck in my speaker, or what are these things called? Headphones, that's what they're called. But yeah, basically day 2 of life, I just kind of stopped breathing, and it kept happening, and they kept having to like basically like clear my airways out, and then it just kept happening over and over and over again, and I had to stay at the hospital way longer than most newborns do. And they just were really concerned, and right off the bat, they knew like something's not adding up because they were running all the tests, doing everything they needed to do, and they just didn't have. I mean, this was 24 years ago, so they didn't really have any information on what my diagnosis was. So it took a really long time, like several months, before they finally figured out, oh, they did some blood testing that then showed that I was anaphylactic to basically 95% of all food. So I was actually, what was happening was I was reacting to my mom's breast milk because I was allergic to it, which we obviously didn't know. So they just
Right.
continued. I would basically have the milk, and then I would have a reaction to it, and then they would keep giving it to me because no one knew.
Right.
So that's when they started to kind of put the dots together, and unfortunately, I wasn't gaining any weight. So it was just a constant struggle. I like wasn't able to have enough to where I could gain weight, and so got to the point early on they started talking about a feeding tube, but my parents were really against it because again, like 24 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information on what it would mean to have a feeding tube, and they just kept talking about it to my parents as if it was sort of this handicap sentence, and your kid's gonna be stuck in the house and they're not gonna be a normal whatever that means, normal kid. And so my parents fought it for a really long time and tried anything they could to just, with the tiny amount of foods that I could have, keep me alive and growing. But the list of allergens kept getting bigger. I kept getting smaller. And it got to the point, I made it all the way till 4.5 years old. And then they were just like, you're 26 pounds. If you do not
Oh my
get your
gosh.
kid this surgery, like she's going to die. And they were also really worried because I was so weak that if I would make it through the surgery strong.
Wow.
So that was a whole thing. And my parents, there was no information, so they're just like, do whatever you need to do. So it was like this long surgery where they also, while they were giving me the tube, they also did a surgery on my esophagus because part of that wasn't working correctly either. And it's called a fundoplication, so or Nissen, it's a long word, Nissen fundoplication,
Oh,
where they take part of your esophagus or your stomach and wrap it around your esophagus because the muscle in your esophagus isn't working.
wow.
It's basically like paralyzed, which was that way since I was born. So
Wow.
anything that they were putting down was coming back up. So
Ooh.
I had that done, and thank God that they did, because literally as soon as I came out of surgery and they started doing the continuous tube feeds, I just started putting on weight. And what they had kind of told my parents was like this sort of death sentence of just, it's going to be a really bad road from here. It ended up being the opposite. I started growing. Had all this energy. I felt like a normal kid. It took a long time to heal, obviously, but once I got strong enough, that's when my wheels started turning. And I was just like, okay, well, now like I'm kind of healthy, so I can like start doing sports or start doing
Right.
something, right? And my parents wanted to let me so bad, but the doctors, obviously, the thing I wanted to do was the last thing. They were like, yeah, you should for sure do that. I wanted
Right.
to ice skate. So they were just like, I don't like, this is a very impact sport, and how are you gonna do it if you have your pump on? And there was just so many questions. But I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't care. So my parents, they listened to the doctors for a while, and then finally they're just like, my parents always raised me to be, there's always a way. Somehow, if you want to do something, this isn't going to hold you back. This is going to be a part of your story, but not your whole story, kind of thing. So finally, I convinced them to let me go to this like Parks and Rec ice skating class. And ever I went, and I literally like never stopped. I just loved it. I loved, I loved feeling like a normal kid. And it was like this freedom for me because other than that, like I wasn't able to go to school like normal kids. I was home hospital schooled. So to get out and to be like on the ice was this freedom for me.
Mm.
And I felt just so I felt so isolated growing up because when you do grow up with a medical condition, you automatically start to think like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, am I different? And how come all the other kids are outside playing and I'm stuck in here? And it was like that a lot when I was in and out of the hospital. So it was hard. So once I started skating, I was like, I'm never gonna quit this. This is the greatest.
Right.
And it was cool too because it was the one place where I felt like I wasn't really treated differently. Like if I did a class or if I had a coach, I felt like they treated me like everyone else and sometimes pushed me a lot harder because they knew, thank God, um, what I was still capable of. And they were like, yeah, you're probably going to have to work a little bit harder to stay at the same pace, but you can do this and you love it. So that's all that matters. So figure skating, I did it for 13 years, and it was honestly the reason I think I can handle the music industry because, man, if you think that's hard, they're crazy. You're gonna have people yelling at you, like
Wow.
screaming at you, and you have to just like do things over and over and over again, which was cool because it taught me. I feel like my first recording session, I'll never forget going in because the producer, my first producer, he thought that he was gonna like trick me, and we had spent all night in the studio putting down just basic kind of tracks to put drums to. Um, so it was like basically just like the demo so that we could get the drums down later. And I did every song. It was like 14 songs. It was literally like 2 in the morning. And he thought he was tricking me. And he was like, okay, that was a really good warm up. So we're actually going to start now. And I was just kind of like, okay, let's go. And he was like shocked by that because he's like, I was kidding. Like, aren't you tired? And I was like, oh, I'm used to this.
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds like you've developed a superhuman power from having such adversity kind of
but
thing.
it also just taught me like worth ethic, I think, in the sense of if you really want something, you have to put the hours in, and you have to know. I like to think of like the music industry. It's a different kind of beast, obviously, because it's very different, but it's the same in the sense where the defeat feels the same and you just have to keep trying. And eventually, at the end of the day, I think what I love about music and the reason I kind of always knew I was going to end up with music is just because at the end of the day, it can literally change people's lives. And that's the kind of business I want to be in. I like to do things that give me a purpose and actually help other people. So it was so cool to start to see songs just resonate with people. I mean, I'm sure you totally understand when that happens. It's just like your heart just explodes because you're like, wow, I can actually contribute to the world around me and like make it a more inclusive space. So that part has been so fun.
You said something just that I think you didn't mean to say, and it's an amazing Freudian slip. I think you went to say work ethic and you said worth ethic.
Oh,
or
wow.
at least that's what I heard was
they
worth.
both work.
But how powerful. And that just struck me, a worth ethic, because I feel I can only speak to myself, but going through a lot myself in life, that self-worth thing has sort of come and gone. It has vaporized like a vapor and then condensed.
Yep.
And I'll feel like, okay. And then it vaporizes again. And you're like, what is my significance? What can I do of benefit to other people? You know, so it's interesting you said that, you know, worth ethic. Now, how's that been for you with a self-worth? I know I saw you at, in Colorado first at the songwriting conference, and I was so moved by you and touched by you because you were very brave to get up on stage looking so beautiful just with your guitar, and you just started to speak about mental illness quite bluntly. Bluntly.
I was so scared.
You didn't sugarcoat it delicately. You kind of were like, here's a sledgehammer and people need to start talking about this stuff. And for me, who has experienced different things as well on that front, like, and still my thing I've had for quite a while now is PTSD, which can be quite debilitating.
Oh, yeah.
Only when I think about it. Yeah. Shakes and Shakes and stutters will come. But I heard you, and it inspired me that when I went back to that very same songwriting conference virtually this year, we just had it like a couple of weeks ago, I opened up.
Yeah.
Only a little bit, but for me, it was a big deal to say I'm a trauma survivor and I have PTSD. And that's as far as I can go.
Well,
but
giving it a name is such a big moment.
Yeah.
Because just by saying I have this, I feel like when I finally learned to do that, calling it by its name almost kind of took away a little bit of its power over me. And that's such a huge step. And that's so exciting because I feel like it kind of takes you. I mean, obviously, that's still something every single day you have to look in the mirror and fight with. It's just, it never really goes away, but it gets a lot better and more livable when it's kind of like, yeah, I see you. I see what you are. And I know you're there and I'm not going to let you control my life. And it's a different ball game once you finally just say, yeah, I went through trauma and it's PTSD and it's real.
Right. I mean, you talked specifically, I know you've been very open about dealing with depression.
Yeah.
So like at what age did that kick in for you?
Oh man, to be honest, if I'm being like completely candid, I was in therapy and going to different doctors at I was like 10. I mean, I was young when I started to just get to that place, and a lot of it was surrounding trauma because it was medical trauma.
Right.
Like I would remember having near death experiences and that would mess with my mind so much that I just started to get deeper and deeper into this really dark hole where I just felt like, is it even worth fighting back at this point? Because I kind of felt like my whole life was sort of this struggle of something bad would happen, the trauma would happen, my medical situation would get a little out of control again, and then I would like fight my way back to health and mentally to health as well, and then something else would happen and I would just feel like there's another hit and go back into the hole, crawl myself out. Like it just was this constant like struggle. And I think very early on, like one of my probably worst time with mental health was when I was around 11 to 12. I was just going through all of it, like the suicidal thoughts and the struggling with, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it to keep fighting? If this is gonna how it's always be, like, what is the purpose in that? And I couldn't really see past that just dark cloud. And I tried so many things from therapy to everyone else, I looked like a perfectly healthy kid. So I think that was the other struggle, was just people never understanding what was really going on. Everyone's like, oh, well, you're like the success story, right? Like you're an ice skater and you're doing all these things and you're an advocate for people with these disabilities. And I was always just like, if only you knew like how messed up my head feels right now. But I think, at an early age, the absolute worst of it was around 11 or 12, but I didn't actually get help knowing, like I had no idea that I had PTSD until I was 16. And that once I figured that out and it actually had a name, because I always thought that PTSD meant that I thought it was for like war veterans and like I never thought like in my mind I'm like, I can't say that, right? Because my trauma looks different. But I had no idea. So then when I remember finally getting into detail with the therapist and saying like, I'm having nightmares every night. I'm waking up screaming. I'm looking at myself and all I see is what's happened. All I see is these flashbacks just constantly all the time. I can't get out of it. And when it happens, I literally feel like I'm there and it is happening to me again. Like I don't know how to breathe. And she gave me like this little questionnaire, and as soon as I had finished it, she just said like, do you have any idea, like, do you realize that these are literally all symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder? And I was kind of relieved in a way just to know that, oh, there's like a name for this is like a normal thing for people that have been through those kinds of moments. And that's when I went through trauma therapy, and honestly, that changed my life. I don't think that if I would have done that, I don't think that I would be having this conversation, because it was controlling me in like every sense of the word, and especially at a young age. And there's so many kids out there who don't know that it has a name, and who don't know how to ask for help, and I'm grateful that I eventually did, but it's scary. Like, it's so scary to be like, I'm struggling.
Yeah, I mean, just like you, I always thought that it was that you would have at some point in your life been covered in bruises and been
Yeah.
and shot at and this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
To have PTSD, I mean, it was a long time, and then I got like multiple diagnoses of the PTSD, and started to understand it a lot more and put two and two together, and learning about the crazy. There's a buffet of symptoms you can have with PTSD.
And they're random. And they hit you out of nowhere. Like, you can be walking. For me, I remember walking through a store, and this is so random, but I opened up a freezer, and there was a certain kind of cleaner that they use in the freezer that is the same kind of ammonia that it smells like when they're in the hospital, when they're like putting the mask over your face in surgery. And it's so random, but like, I didn't even know that was a trigger for me. And I literally, like, I'm walking through the store, and I just like broke down, and I just started to shake and have like a full on panic attack. I had no idea that triggers come from things like that. But that's the kind of stuff you eventually learn about, which I finally understood after that. It was like, wow, so I don't have to be in a war zone to have my own war zone every day.
Right. Yeah, I had some visual triggers from part of sort of the trauma that happened to me. And I mean, it went for like over a decade before I could even understand what would happen. I'd get vertigo, or my breathing would go really faint, like, and I'd go to the doctor, who'd give me like some Benadryl and say, well, you probably have an ear infection or something with the vertigo. But it was, nobody, including myself, didn't understand what was going on until then. It was like in 2001, I started to confide in somebody randomly at a restaurant in Santa Monica. And I had the full on panic attack where I couldn't breathe. It was a scene in a restaurant. Like, it was horrible, and I couldn't breathe, and the waiters are like coming over, is she okay? And they sat me by the vending machine, and you've got passers-by going, put your head between your legs. Like, oh, I mean, and that, you've just reminded me of another one as well. There was, in my apartment once, I used to live at the Oakwood Apartments, where so many people in LA go and live when they first come. And I suddenly had an issue with wasps, and the wasps would come out. And I realized I have kind of like an issue with bugs or things that are unexpected, are unexpected, that come at me unexpected.
Out of control,
Yes, and that I can't control, and things that would fly and come around me, I've would have a massive reaction to that is well beyond the norm. And I remember going to the front of the house of Oakwood, and again, couldn't breathe. And I mean, like, people thought that somebody had tried to kill me. And I was like, you don't understand. There was a wasp, and they're like, sit her down. And I remember the manager at the time, he's like, I used to be a Navy SEAL. I know what to do here. Get her caffeine, sit her down, between the legs. And it was like, it was so embarrassing.
Oh, I know. That
so
part,
embarrassing.
That part, it does suck, just because after the fact of things happen, like, there was one time where I was in a hospital literally visiting a friend that was in really, really bad shape, that was really sick. And just visiting her and seeing her sick, I started to get all the triggers, and I was trying so hard to ignore all of the triggers because I wanted to be there for her. But leaving the hospital, at the time, thank God she's still with us and doing well. She's a fighter. But at the time, her mom, as we were walking out, was kind of having this conversation of like, the doctors don't feel like that she's going to make it much longer. And we just kind of want to prepare you for that. And literally, in standing there having the conversation, like, I've had this happen to myself, like in settings where the medical stuff is being done to me. But I literally just I was fine. I was talking. I thought I was handling it. And the next thing I know, I'm like literally passed out, like on the ground. They're calling like all the people over the intercom and I ended up in the ER because I literally like fainted. And it's so frustrating because you don't have control over your own body when that happens. And that's the most embarrassing part because sometimes I'm just like, I'm good. Like, because in my mind, I'm good, but like your body remembers trauma and what it does to your blood pressure is not always great.
Wow.
So
we have so much more in common than I even realized, truthfully, because I've also fainted quite a few times as an adult,
and people don't get how quick it happens either. Right. Like I try to avoid certain things that I think will be a trigger for that because I really don't want to keep fainting in public.
No.
But when it happens, it's just like I had no idea, like I really didn't feel like the warning signs of it coming. And that's why now I'm so careful because when I'm in a situation, like especially in the hospital, I just tell them like right off the bat, like this is a very normal thing. You might be drawing my blood, you might be giving me a shot, but like I might faint and I might not know that it's coming. So I'm just gonna sit down for this.
Yeah.
But you don't know that until it happens. And then you're like, well, this sucks.
Yeah. I have to hum when they do like blood tests and stuff. I just went to the dentist and had to be numbed and the whole time. And I'm not aware of it, but I'm going, making up a thing. And he asked me. And I've always done that for like as long as I can remember, like as an adult with the humming. But I read some research at one point that cats do this, and people think when a cat's purring that they're automatically happy, but that's not the case. The cat purrs when they're under stress as well. And the purring soothes and does a vibration all through like a sound acoustic therapy, which is one of my little pet interests, is sort of sound and healing and acoustic healing. So the humming, when people hum, it's actually an excellent anti-anxiety thing, hence using it at the dentist. But it's a good little thing, like, you know, for any anxiety thing, if you kind of go, because it sort of moderates your breath, because you can't actually hum if you're in a panic attack going like you can't hum. So it's like at the first sign of something getting, if you're in traffic or something and something's causing distress, you can almost like hum a little tune and it will help to regulate. And it sends a lot of like zillions of neurological signals through your body and cellular signals that things are okay. Cool. It's soothing, which is like how a mother would sing in a soothing voice to a baby, like how we talk to dogs and stuff. Like,
I sing to my dog all the time.
We put a soothing tone in our voice though. And it's, the words are irrelevant. Like you can, it's funny because I'm trying to foster this dog from Mexico and it crossed my mind. This dog won't even speak English. And I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I'm quite amused by this idea that I could have like this Spanish speaking dog that only understands commands in Spanish.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool though. What kind of dog is it?
A Chihuahua. Apparently this is
I love those. I used to have one.
I've got two Chihuahuas. One was a full-on rescue, and the other one hailed from a parking lot. But I love them so much, and a little bit of a softie. I'm a softie for the newsletters and the you know, let's give
That's
this
how I ended up
a second chance. Yeah. What kind's your dog?
She's half lab, half border collie.
Oh,
she's
nice.
a big girl. But she literally, same thing. My mom and I tried to foster 2 puppies that were in need. This lady rescued like 8 of them, but she couldn't take care of all of them at once. So she put on Facebook, like on the community page, and was like, I have all these puppies and I just need someone to take them while they're still being bottle fed. And then I will line up different people to maybe adopt them. We failed. Well, we didn't fail at fostering them like we did. We nursed them to health. They're healthy, happy puppies, but like we kept Lola for me. And then the other one, Gracie, her sister, went to my cousin. So they didn't really go very far.
Right.
We fell in love with them, but...
Did you see what happened in LA a few weeks ago with that RV? Did you see that?
Oh my...
They found the RV with 21 Chihuahuas in it.
Oh my goodness.
Some of them, they'd literally never, ever, they'd been born and never left the RV. Like it was like horrific. That's what the first news said. Now, whether they unearthed more, but they had just been like breeding, and it was out of control, but they all got rescued. There are some amazing animal shelters. I mean, shout out, that one was Deity, Deity, and I follow them on Instagram and stuff, and there's just such good-hearted people who do this stuff. Getting back to the PTSD, and talking about the body trauma, I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh my goodness. I've been told about this book, but I haven't read it yet. I'm going to write it down again.
And I'm just going to look up the author like really quick, because he has a very unusual name and I want to say it on the show. The Body Keeps the Score. Here we go. The author's name is... I'm not seeing the author's name here.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of this book though.
Here it is.
Somebody
By
told me.
Bessel van der Kolk. So that's a very unusual name.
I'm like, wait, what?
Bessel van der Kolk. But
how does he spell his first name?
B as in boy, Essel.
Okay.
Or I should be totally talking, because I passed my ham radio stuff during COVID. I should be talking in the international phonetic alphabet. Bravo, Echo, Sierra, Sierra, Echo, Lima. There you go.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Things that distract you when you have PTSD.
Oh, for real, yeah.
Ham radio. But that book, I got it on audio because it suits me more listening to the audio books. And it was really fascinating. And my own sort of trauma treatments I was going through, they told me about this book. Now, you mentioned the trauma treatment. Was that talk therapy?
It was it was kind of a mixture of a lot of things, because I also did meditation, deep breathing. We did a lot of I had specific triggers, very specific triggers that were, unfortunately, most of them can't really be avoided, because obviously my health stuff is always kind of going to be ongoing. And so what was happening was, anytime I was going back in the hospital for different either treatments or surgeries or whatever, I couldn't handle it mentally. I just was shutting down and trying to avoid it at all costs. So we kind of, a little bit of it, to be honest, was sort of like submersion therapy, because part of my therapy was literally going back into situations that I would normally have a complete panic attack in, and like slowly starting to kind of take back my own subconscious, I guess.
How would you do that?
Some of it was trial and error, and to be honest, some of it I feel like I tried to do too quickly, because through all of the talking therapy, like I thought, there's something, I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but there's like grounding techniques where you literally put both feet on the ground and you say like a certain thing to for me, my repetitive thing would be like, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm safe, because ultimately all of my trauma comes from being a little kid and kind of being forced into different procedures and stuff, or ambulances or whatever, that I was fighting them on because I didn't understand they were trying to help me. And so that was sort of the thing that I kept saying to myself. And then a lot of it was like deep breathing stuff. And I also took not medication. Well, I took that too, but meditation. And that helped a lot, because that just kind of opened up this whole new world for me of, I can be present. And the whole problem with PTSD is obviously going back, and that whole I'm in that moment again, I'm in danger. So that helped a lot too. But yeah, I would say I kind of rushed parts of the I can't speak today, my goodness. Perfect day for a podcast. But the submersion therapy, because I didn't really have a choice at some points. Like I had to have certain surgeries done. And so it was sort of like baby steps. Like at one point I was just walking through the hospital, like either to see someone else or there to pick up like a prescription or stuff. And I would start to do these mindful things of, okay, little like one toe at a time. But then I had to eventually have like a full-on surgery. And when that happened, it was kind of like practicing all the things I had learned, but in real time. And I feel like I did good with some of it, but some of it I rushed a little. Like I thought, okay, I'm not getting my blood drawn today. I'm going to go with like my mom when she was getting hers done, and I'm just going to be in the room. That didn't go so well the first time. No, because I thought I was good. I honestly felt really good in the beginning. But it was actually walking out that I started to feel like the room spin a little bit and I could feel myself getting sweaty. And I was like, here we go. So I ended up passing out that day too. But because I did it once, the next time it happened, it was a little bit easier. And I just kept throughout the process. It's funny you mentioned humming because I never really even thought of that as a coping mechanism. But one of the things I always have done is when they're doing procedures or any kind of blood draw, anything on me, I'm always in my like humming lyrics in my head.
There you go.
So it's so funny because that makes so much sense that would help. But yeah, I do that a lot. But yeah, when it comes to, my therapist always kind of explained it as whatever the trigger is, it's kind of like exposing yourself to things that are linked to that, but in really small increments and doses to where you're in control this time. So
yeah,
because that's the biggest thing. I feel like for me, at least, the biggest feeling is the out of control feeling, and I don't like it. I hate that.
Does the word ambush resonate with you at all? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because one of my worst flashbacks, and that's actually one of the flashbacks that I recently made a music video, and we put it in the music video because it has controlled my life for so long. But there was a time where, and I'll never forget it, it's one of my worst flashbacks. But of course, this car is going to turn on right now. Hang on 1 second. Sorry.
That's all right.
My neighbor's in his truck. But it's basically, I was little and screaming and fighting the hospital, the doctors, and they had to physically restrain me and shove the mask over my face to knock me out to be able to do the procedure they were doing. And I just remember like screaming into the mask. And when you remember stuff like that, it just, especially as a kid, anytime now, like I feel restrained or like claustrophobic or even if like, I remember times like growing up, like my friends and I would be like wrestling or playing, I would just freak out. Like, don't hold me down. Like, don't touch me. Like, because it's so, you can't control like your body automatically responding to like, oh, I've been in this situation before and I was in danger. And so
it's making me shake. Just you saying about being restrained.
Sorry about
that. But I mean, it's so, I didn't know that you had PTSD. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now,
journey.
Do you still have that? Like, is it a lifelong thing that they said you'll always have, or did you kind of consider that you got rid of it? Like,
I'm actually in the final parts of my trauma therapy right now, which it's taken years to finish, mostly because I just have had to grow in a lot of ways with it, but also just life in general. But the final chapter of mine, something that we do is we literally write out, because part of healing from things is literally speaking about them and putting them on paper. And so that's part of the journey, was writing out every flashback word for word, and then you read it out loud for the first time, and then you like underline unhealthy thoughts. And then you kind of take those unhealthy thoughts and challenge them. And that's sort of like the part we're in right now. But yeah, I would say, because it's something that I still am always going to have, like, it's not a situation where I can never be in that situation again. I mean, my life is always sort of going to be going into hospitals a lot. And so I definitely struggle with it still, but I will say it's a completely different ball game now than it was before, because now I feel like for the most part I'm like 95% in control, whereas before it was like 99% in control and I was just kind of dealing with it. But I think the biggest part of the therapy for me has just been, I'm an adult now. I'm not a little kid. I'm not being forced into situations. Like, these people are helping me. They're keeping me alive. And they're also, it's different when you're little too, because now I can just tell them, like, I've had a multiple, and sometimes they're not nice about it, to be honest. But I have to just explain, like, I need you to tell me exactly what you're doing as you do it. Because I want to feel in control. Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. And when you said a part of it is, writing down the thoughts and challenging them, What do you mean by that exactly? Like,
Well, one of the things that we did, at least in my therapy with my therapist, is we wrote different chapters of, okay, this is a particular traumatic event, and then we write it all out, and then within it, as I was speaking about it and she was writing it, there were certain things I would say. Like, for instance, a lot of mine had to do with like guilt in being born special needs and thinking like I'm automatically a burden on everyone, or I my parents didn't really sign up for that, and all of these unhealthy thoughts that ultimately aren't the truth, but I tell myself a lot. And basically every time we would come across me saying something like that, or if it has to do with like um a good example is like sexual trauma. If you say like the shame that's involved in that, or the
right,
blaming yourself, or like why didn't I fight back? Why didn't I
right.
respond kind of things. Those things are all ultimately 100% false because your body is under attack. So often people freeze. And there was a lot of just stuff like that within my own narrative where I just blamed myself for just so many things that were completely 100% out of my control. So it's just we find the thought, we underline it, and then we challenge it. So it would be like my therapist asking me questions like, "Well, why do you think like that? And do you really what makes you think that was in your control, and what makes you think that that was your fault?" Um and it was
Gosh,
a
that's great.
lot, but it definitely helped so much because sometimes just writing it down and
Yeah.
challenging that shameful or negative thought with one that's healthy is so helpful when you start to have a panic attack, because you can just look at it and be like, okay, this is what my mind is trying to tell me, and like this is the facts.
Mm.
um and it's hard to differentiate the two, especially when you're having a panic attack, because you can't differentiate anything. You're
No,
just
that's
not.
right. It's hard. It's so easy to say this stuff, and I think there's so many similarities with people who have like panic attacks and people who
Yeah.
also have like anger issues. I think
Yeah.
it's a loss of control of how you're
Right.
reacting ultimately, whether it's the panic attack or the crying or getting
Yeah.
emotional. And and apparently one of the ways that you're supposed to deal with it if you have these issues is you make a little separation. So you say to yourself, I'm aware, let's say in the case of a panic attack, which we know will rise a little bit, it will have a rise
Yeah.
up. And so it's like, I'm aware I'm feeling that tightness in my chest. I'm aware I'm
Right.
feeling that like closing of my throat,
Yeah.
whatever those things that happen in your particular. And apparently, when you say, I'm aware that, and you can in your head label the sensation, it's supposed to make you feel a bit more in control of what's
Yeah.
going on in your body. But it's so easy to say when in the
Yeah. When
moment
you're in
you're
the
just like, in my case, I could be like shaking pretty violently.
yeah. It's
Um,
hard to take control of
oh,
when
I'm
that
getting
happens. That's why I think it's helpful, like when it's helpful, kind of like you were saying, to start recognizing it as it starts happening, like that first trigger, that first thought, because that's what I found is if I can recognize myself going in that direction early, oftentimes I can stop the process by just, okay, I'm starting to feel panic, start doing like a 3-minute breathing space, or do a meditation, or say a prayer, do something that's going to keep your mind in the present, because ultimately that's what gets me is just I go from right here, right now to just something like a million years ago, and it feels like I'm there.
so
Which
your
is the
thing
hard part.
Your thing is you tend to go into the past, not the future, because equally bad
Mhm.
is people who, which I'm totally guilty of, I mean, will be going into the future. What if this happens? What if
Oh
this
yeah.
happens? And that can cause enormous amounts of anxiety.
Oh
But
yeah.
your thing is you go into the past more than the future.
Yeah, I mean, I have anxiety in general, so I definitely think about the future more than I should. But the thing that really gets me is always the past and the actual traumatic events. And when I think that's another I mean, I didn't even think about that till just now, but another big part of that is with my situation, there are a lot of what ifs all the time. So something I had to learn really, really young is how to deal with that anxiety of, okay, like I can do everything completely right and be aware and take all my medicine and do everything I'm supposed to do, and I could still end up in the hospital today. That's just me walking outside. Like, you never really know what's going to happen, and I think that it's amazing how much easier for some reason I've been able to navigate that, and I think it's just cuz I was born this way than I am going saving myself from going backwards, because I don't know why everybody's trigger, like, everyone's triggers are different. Obviously everyone's trauma is different, so the way your body responds is ultimately always going to be different.
Right.
But I definitely think, I think the past definitely messes with me more than the future, when it comes to PTSD, at least, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, anxiety in general is always like, well, what if
Yeah.
what if the sky is falling? Like, what are you gonna do?
I mean, you're the first person. I'm kind of thrilled, which I don't mean in a horrible way, that you have PTSD, because you're the first person I've been able to talk to who has it. And I've been pretty shocked at how it's gripped me so much.
Yeah.
And what I learned about, which I guess you will understand, is the re-traumatization.
Yeah.
So I had 2 in a row kind of re-traumatizations.
Yeah.
And this was just something I was not aware of. Like I'd had a trauma. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It affected my life very drastically, but I got on with my life, not realizing I was still bearing so much of the scars of it, you know. And then out of the blue, to incidents that would normally be not grotesque incidents happened. Like one was even like a little fender bender.
Yeah.
But I either lost consciousness or I had no recollection.
Yeah.
But from that split second, off the charts PTSD, like off the charts. And I was diagnosed with a concussion. So we don't know yet, because I did lose consciousness, if part of it was a concussion. I don't know. But it was, the symptoms were awful. Like I felt nausea and vertigo for 6 months. It was horrible. And I would fall down. I'd like stand up and walk and just fall down. The room was spinning. That part luckily didn't last that long, but weird stuff as well. Like I couldn't look at my normal computer monitors, which are HP monitors, but I could look at a Mac. And the neurologist said, you know, you're the third person who's told me with a concussion that they can look at a Mac monitor, but not a PC monitor. I would feel like I was on a ship with seasickness. And I sort of thought, like, why aren't people looking into this? Like, really,
oh my gosh, yes.
Monitor technology that is not triggering nausea. Let's make our monitors like that, because God knows what it's doing to our brains. If your brain becomes sensitive for whatever reason, and monitors like PC monitors are causing nausea, but Mac monitors aren't. Why? Monitors doing to our brain the rest of the time when we're not in a vulnerable situation. But it was, so the first thing happened, and then another thing happened. And what I noticed, which was really terrifying, was the escalation. So it was like the first PTSD diagnosis was like one thing, went through the trauma treatment like you, and then the next thing that happened escalated it with a batch of symptoms. And then when the third thing that happened, and I'm not even hardly thinking, but my body has the memory of it. So like my body will shake, because it knows that somewhere in my mind now is the topic of this thing, you know, that was the re-traumatization. And the symptoms were terrible. Like I had violent shaking, like micro convulsions and stuttering. And I'm almost a lifelong performer, you know, from when I was a child. I was acting on stage and never had any kind of communication issues. And all of a sudden I couldn't get my words out, and I was talking with work colleagues and having like terrible crying breakdowns. Even in environments where it was absolutely not appropriate to have
I feel like it's always in environments where it's not appropriate that hits too.
Just awful. Like, and I had some writing to do on a project I was writing on, and I had to just write about like an animal being locked in a cage, and that sense of ambush, which for me is enormous, the sense of ambush. And I was nearly passing out writing about this scene of an animal just being put in a cage. And I had to tell my boss I was working with, I mean, how embarrassing to say, like, I can't write this thing you've assigned me because every time I go to write it, I feel nauseous, like I'm going to pass out, you know?
Yeah.
So just, I've been shocked at how dramatic the symptoms have been, really shocked.
Yeah.
And have you ever had, because there's such a, as I say, a buffet of symptoms. One that still persists with me is light and sound sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get a lot of shaking, like if somebody's eating potato chips. I can eat potato chips in the bag because I know the crunch. I'm causing the crunching of the bag, the snapping.
Right.
But if someone close to me is eating potato chips and it's that frequency of the bag, like the of the bag, I really shake, right? Really badly shake. And it doesn't even make sense logically. There's no way to make sense of it. But as I've had explained by experts and counselors and stuff, the amygdala and the cortisol things are like coursing through your brain, and they make the devil's concoction that decides, well, when I hear a potato chip bag rustle, it's going to make her feel like she's about to be murdered. You know, so it's like... I mean, it's like so being incarcerated in your own prison in your mind. It's opened up my mind so much as well to be sympathetic with people like war veterans and people in our military, and not to get in any way political, but police who are, you know, and firemen, like firemen who have to go and nearly kill themselves every time they go out. You know, it's these people must end up with PTSD levels during their job. They must. You know,
well, and just watching like a lot of the people that I know that are in the military or in law enforcement or fire department, all of those things, oftentimes they've had to watch people that they love and call friends be hurt or die and things like that, and watch any kind of trauma like that. It's kind of like after, I remember I had my aunt, or technically she's a second cousin, I don't know, it's really confusing. Okay, so my mom's cousin is her husband. So that, I don't know how that relates to us. It's very confusing. But
I'm already
we all hung out, and I just say my aunt because it's easier than my like third cousin removed or whatever. But they were at the Route 91 festival when the shots started going, and they still to this day have horrible PTSD. And one of the victims that was there was some kind of car started backfiring and it sounded like gunfire. And she literally was just standing in the parking lot and just hit the deck where she was at because of how terrified she was, because she watched people die in front of her. Like, that doesn't go away. You're always those kind of, unfortunately, there's certain images that are just always sort of ingrained in your mind. So it's hard to learn how to deal with them and just acknowledge that they're there instead of your body acknowledging that they're there, which certain things I've just come to accept are always kind of going to be triggers for me. And I know what they are, and I know how to kind of, if that panic attack does come, what to do. So
you can't take me through it. What do you do?
Yeah. So oftentimes what I do, it depends on some of the triggers I'm really still growing in, but the ones that any medical kind of trauma, like for instance, something that's always been a trigger and has gotten significantly worse as I've gotten older is, and it sounds so dumb, but needles, which I've had about 1 million of them in me because of what I've gone through, but because it doesn't matter. Like, I can literally see, like, oh my goodness, the amount of shots we're seeing being given on TV right now. Just watching that, my body just shuts down. And one of the things that I've learned, that grounding exercise has helped me so much, where if I start to feel out of control and my mind starts to go back to like, well, that was you, and all of this happened, one of the things that I'll do is I have this app on my phone, and I think it's the Calm app, but I put both of my feet on the ground, and then I open up this like it's an app that's like, it's basically the 3-minute breathing space, but it's called something else. but you literally like breathe with it, like really deep breaths. And then I just keep telling myself, like, you're safe, you are present, you are in control. 'Cause those are the things that start to get a little bit become gray areas in those situations. I start to feel very out of control. But recently I had sometimes triggers hit you that you didn't even know were triggers.
Right.
Like recently I had to learn basically because there was a huge shortage of epinephrine EpiPens, which is a whole other thing in
Wow.
itself. But there was this huge shortage, and so they were giving everyone these like dinosaur age epinephrine auto injectors that were very similar to the ones that I grew up having to use. And so I was in like my adult trauma survivor headspace. I was like, I can do this. I'm going to train myself how to use this older version of one because obviously I need to know what to do if that happens. So I couldn't get my regular epinephrine injectors because my insurance stopped carrying it. So I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to have to get used to this other one. So the way that we've always practiced in my house is we take like an apple or something to inject into and like teach ourselves how to use it. So I thought I was being like all proactive, and I was like, I'm just going to teach myself how to use it because I know how to do this. So I started the process, and I didn't know, I guess like subconsciously I knew, but I hadn't remembered it until I physically saw it. But one of my triggers was growing up in the anaphylactic reactions I had where I almost died. There was always this moment after the injection is given where the needle was just laying there next to me, like the shot that had been given. So I injected this apple and was trying to teach myself. And because it's not like the new auto injectors where you pull it out and you never see the needle, which is so awesome. But unfortunately, these are like old ones that they're giving. So they're like, it's just hanging out there. So I injected the apple, and I had the EpiPen. It's not an EpiPen. I forget what it's called. It's like an older version, but I was holding it in my hand. And literally, I finished it. I thought I was fine. And then just staring at it, my hands started trembling, and I set it down. And I just like, I haven't cried like that in like years. I was like hyperventilating, sobbing. And my mom came and was like, what? And then as soon as she saw like what was happening, she like put the pieces together. And I was like, oh, okay. We need to. And at that point, certain panic attacks happen, and it's gotten so far to where it's kind of like you just have to wait for it to pass. There's not a lot that you can do once it gets to that point. So that was one of those things where I talked about in therapy, and I was like, I didn't know that this was such a problem for me. And I ended up, if I'm being completely honest, like I looked at the situation and was like, okay, I need to be proactive for my own health. And I know myself. And if I'm in a situation tomorrow and I need to use this, I'm not going to because I'm terrified of it, which I get it. I'm 24. I shouldn't be scared. I'm terrified of it. So my thing was like, this just isn't acceptable for me, and it's not going to work. And I'm not going to sit there and hesitate when I actually need it. So I explained that to my doctor, and thankfully my doctor is amazing. He's been with me since I was a toddler. And he just kind of heard what I was saying and is like, your blood pressure drops so quickly in anaphylactic shock, and you've always been one that tends to pass out, and you don't have time to hesitate. So he ended up writing like a specific prescription so that I get the ones that I'm used to, because I mean, if it was something else, I would have time to sort of like work up this desensitization to it, but I don't in this case. So I was just like, sometimes you just have to pick your battles with it, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's life and death. You need the one where you don't see the needle for sure. I so get exactly what you just said.
So it sounds so funny too, because when I tell people that I'm like scared of needles, it's so funny because they're like, how are you scared of needles? Like you've had so many of them. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like,
yes.
It's because it doesn't hurt. It's never about it hurting. It's about what it does to my body and me
and your brain.
Yeah, it's just going full time, and I'm not going with it. And yeah, it's hard because I think people, they don't always understand what a trigger that is. Like if someone's posting a thing, they're excited they got the vaccine, and that's awesome, and they post a picture of them getting it because it's this awesome moment of our world finally starting to hopefully get back to normal.
Yeah.
And they don't know that someone's going to watch that like me and like be fighting panic.
Right.
So it's hard because there's things that are trigger warnings for any kind of trauma survivor. So it's hard to know what those things are until it just hits you.
Now, just going back to how you live your life.
Yeah.
This is a weird question to ask, but can you eat any food or does
Yeah.
you can?
I can have a tiny amount of foods. It's not enough to get like proper nutrition from, which is why I still am on the tube. And probably will be always. But the good thing, thank goodness, is there's like a very, very tiny list of like 5% of foods that I can have. And for instance, like the only allergen, thank goodness, that I ever outgrew was dairy and milk, which is odd because that's the thing that initially almost took me out as a newborn.
Right.
But I did outgrow that. And so now actually the prescription formula that goes into my feeding tube every day is actually whey based. So I can have like cheese, thank goodness. I can have chocolate. The only thing that's
nice.
hard, I know, I don't know what
that's a good one to have.
But yeah. But if I couldn't,
up there.
Oh yeah, without chocolate it would be hard. But I think also the hard part about that is everything has cross contamination with my other allergens. So most of the time I either am cooking everything here for myself or I have like specific brands where, for instance, like chocolate. There's 2 companies, only 2 unfortunately in the US that I know of, or that really any of us know of in the allergy world, that basically what they do in their plant is they built a wall and they separate the stuff that's being made with nuts in it with the stuff that isn't. So for instance, like Hershey's and Dove chocolates, both of those have separate plants for things that have nuts in it and things that don't. So I'm able to have their chocolate because of their manufacturing policy, but those often change too. So I read every label, even if it's all from the same box, I'm still checking the label because things can change. Like one batch of something could be made at the other plant, or you just never know. So you do have to read everything. So which is frustrating.
Is it nuts that's bad? Like a nuts?
Yeah, nuts. So basically my worst, I have like, it's a long list, but the main ones are peanuts, tree nuts, pork, eggs, seeds, soy, fish, shellfish. I'm forgetting so many things. So many. Most fruits and vegetables. Not all of them, thankfully. I can have like apples and blueberries. Blueberry actually just got added back into my diet not long ago.
That's
and
good.
I love blueberries.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's oftentimes too, I have to constantly get retested at least once or twice a year because things change. And unfortunately, I did lose. I'm actually really glad I lost it now because it was wheat. And I feel so much better being gluten-free, but before I had no idea what it can do to your body. So it was one of the only things I could have. So I was eating a lot of it. But once the allergen just kept getting worse. And the problem with allergens is there's so much like information out there that counteracts itself. So oftentimes nowadays this whole immunotherapy thing is going around, and there's a lot of flaws in the research.
What is it?
It works for people to a certain extent, but basically the whole idea of it is you're giving the person teeny tiny doses of their allergen and trying to build up an immunity. The problem with it is oftentimes either an adverse reaction happens where it just gets to a point it's too much, or what really is sad is people do it and then they say you've worked yourself up to being able to have like 1 peanut a day. Well, if you don't eat that 1 peanut a day every single day at the same time like clockwork and you miss a day, say you get sick or you start all over. So it's just, to me, it's working for some people. Like if you have a really low allergen, you've never been in anaphylactic shock yet, it's huge progress because it's helping kids grow out of their allergen, which is cool.
Yeah.
But when you're someone like me that doesn't even qualify for it, unfortunately, that's just too much of a risk factor. But I am seeing so much hope because there's been so much growth in the past like 10 years that has been giving me hope that eventually I really think we're going to figure out, instead of tricking the immune system, how to actually heal it in itself. Because what an allergic reaction is literally just like if your body gets the flu or a virus and it attacks itself, because it's trying to rid of that virus. That's what an allergic reaction is it's your body's basically taking food and responding to it like it's a foreign invader and attacking itself. So if we can teach the immune system how to differentiate between danger and not danger,
Right.
or we can just heal the immune system in itself, which is what there's like some Chinese herb therapy that I'm not gonna lie, when I first heard about it, I was just like, yeah, I've been told all these things could
Right.
help me. But there
Right.
is one doctor out of Mount Sinai, and her therapy is working on a
Wow.
lot of people, some of which are my friends. And so I'm just like, there's hope. Like,
Yeah.
eventually, I mean, it doesn't completely get rid of your allergies, but at least just to be able to not have like the contact and airborne reactions would completely change my life. So
Wow.
I'm all for it. If I'm hoping it'll get out there more, and then it'll be more affordable, obviously, because right now it's like thousands of dollars a treatment.
Wow.
But someday I think we're getting close. I just think it takes its time, and also there's always going to be that factor of the pharmaceutical companies, and they obviously don't want us to find
Right.
what that is, because then
Yeah.
they're going to be out of business.
They don't want you to find like a mushroom or a lettuce that happens to
Yeah.
have the enzyme that makes it all go away.
Yeah, they don't want us to know that. So it's hard because like they're the ones funding all of these clinical
Right.
trials for these
Right.
immunotherapies.
Oh,
And it makes you
yeah.
question, like, why did you pay for that
Right.
if there's not something we don't know? And there's unfortunately money is involved in everything, and I've had to learn over the years as an advocate, when I find stuff like that out, to just be like, okay, part my ways with that organization and just kind of keep doing what we're doing and keep doing research and talking
Yeah.
to all of these people, because there are things that are not modern medicine that help your immune system a lot. And
Well, I mean, there's got to be, because we're still
there's a million.
we're still on the planet.
Yeah,
right? Like, how long has the pharmaceutical industry been around? Not
right.
the grand history of.
Well, and that's the thing. Back then, like a million years ago, we didn't have allergies because we weren't putting all of these things in our crops.
Right.
And there's so many things that I feel like. My dog is trying to be in this conversation. Sorry.
That's all right. I've got that situation.
My little one. We have two. My dog is the lab border collie, but we have another one named Epi, actually,
Nice.
who's a little miniature pinscher, and she likes to talk.
Just what you want when you have a sensitivity to the needles is the dog named Effie.
It's so funny because I'm like scared of them in a sense, but I also like EpiPens are. I have so much gratitude for them because they've saved my life like 8 times. But yeah, it's such a weird relationship. It's like I find humor in it sometimes because I'm like, I can be so detached sometimes, and then other times I'm just like things that are normal for me. Like, for instance, like I had a huge feeding tube infection recently, and it was awful and super painful, and I'm just like taking it in and out, doing what I need to do, and everyone's just like, there's a hole in your stomach and that's normal. And I'm like, yep, this doesn't bother me, but everything else does.
Now, do you have to, and if any of this is just like off limits?
Oh, like, no, you're good.
I mean, do you have a little, I guess, a port in your tummy, like a little port? And so
it's like, I can't really see it right now, I don't think, but it's basically like, have you ever seen like the end of like a raft where they like blow it up?
Yes, like an airbed. Yeah, to be the most horrible interviewer ever to say.
It's like, okay, this mic is in my way, but this is it.
Okay.
Right here.
Oh, it's a cute little port.
Thank you. It's very actually cute. Called a Mickey button, oddly enough.
A Mickey button, so it's got a nice name.
Yes, they try to make it like cool for kids. But mine is tiny. There's obviously different types of tubes. Mine goes into my stomach. But some people have them where they go into the intestine. And there's also different types of tubes. So there's like, when you first get your feeding tube, you don't have a little one like this. You have to do the long one because your stoma's still healing. But it takes like, the only problem that is not always foreseeable is, for instance, I've had mine for this May will be 20 years. And so when you have it for long periods of time, like obviously the body was never intended to have a foreign object in it that long. So there are some issues that have arisen recently where there's like a little sore in my stoma and it won't go away because the tube's constantly on it. So we're not really sure what we're doing about that. I'm kind of like trying to pick my battles because I really don't want to have the surgery to redo it and add a new tube and close this one because it's just like a whole thing. But yeah, I've been trying all kinds of interesting, and oddly enough, some of the things I've been trying to try to heal this ulcer, oh my goodness, I've been doing all kinds of like, my grandma's super into like holistic medicine and different vitamins and minerals. And so she's always like, try this or try this. And if I'm not allergic to it, I usually do. And something that actually helped get rid of my recent feeding tube infection was colloidal silver.
Okay.
I did not think it was gonna work, but I was desperate, so I was like, I'm gonna put whatever I can in here, and it literally helped clear up the infection in like a few days. So I was like,
wow,
I'm here for it. Like,
so what did you do? Like apply it or drink it? What do you do?
Yeah, it's like a little, you can drink it actually, but what I did was literally just like take my tube out and put it, because it has like a little dropper, and put it in and then put the tube back in, which I'm not technically supposed to do because they tell you you're not really supposed to take it out yourself. But like when you've had it for 20 years, it's a little annoying to go have a procedure scheduled to do something you can do in your house.
Yeah, that's right.
So my doctor knows that I change my own tube all the time, but I had to go in recently just because we were trying to figure out what our options were for the ulcer situation because it's very painful. But he just said, it sucks, but there's really not. There's like redo it or deal. So I'm dealing at the moment because I'm not gonna go have be in the hospital for a week in the middle of COVID. Not trying to do that. So I'm just kind of waiting and hoping. We're trying all kinds of things. Like I tried the thing that keeps the tube in your stomach. There's like this teeny tiny balloon filled with water. And so you take a syringe and take the water out when you take it in and out and then put it back. But the balloon is what keeps hitting this sore in my stomach. So my thing is like, if I deflate the balloon, then there's not something on it all the time. So I've been doing that a lot. Obviously you have to be really careful though, because you don't want it coming out.
Right.
So I've been trying all kinds of things and so far not so great, but I'm hopeful that there's going to be something. And it's not like, I don't know. There's a certain level of pain that you just kind of like deal with. And then there's a level where it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And it hasn't gotten to the, I can't do this anymore. So I'm just like, we're just rolling with it because it doesn't hurt all the time. So if I can like,
do you take like pills, like Tylenol or anything, or you?
Yeah, I can. Unfortunately, with ulcers, medicines like Tylenol and Aleve, those kinds of things can make it worse and make them bleed more. So what I usually do is I have like liquid lidocaine and I put that in my stomach a lot. I also take a medicine. It's called Carafate or Sucrafate. I don't know, but it like coats your stomach. And so I take a syringe and actually put that directly into the tube like several times a day. And that helps a lot because ultimately what it is it's like an open wound. So if you put something like, for instance, everyone's like, how come you're 24 and you haven't really ever drank? And I'm like, because alcohol and an open wound just don't sound fun.
Right.
So I've always been very careful about that because even times where like I've had the flu and had to take like NyQuil or whatever, there's alcohol in that. And let me tell you, it burns. So I'm just like, I don't want to do that on purpose. But yeah, there's so many things that you learn along the way, which is why it's really cool to be an advocate and meet other people with different disabilities because you think like you're the only person that this happens to. So one day I finally asked him like, okay, is it just me, or when everyone
Right.
else has this specific type of thing, does their stomach feel like it's on fire?
Right.
And they're like, no, that's me too. And I'm like, cool, so we're not crazy, it's fine. Like, you have to.
I'm just fascinated talking to you like on all fronts. I've got like a million questions in my head. One of them is when you were talking about the nuts and the airborne stuff. Are
Yeah.
you one of those people that they talk about on flights where if someone literally opened a bag of peanuts?
It's happened. It's literally happened. And that's how we found out that it was as severe as it was, because there was a time, the first time that it happened airborne wise was I was 5 years old, and we had a rental car, and the person that had the rental car before had left actual peanuts like in it, they were on the
Wow.
ground. And it hadn't really been cleaned really well, I guess. But I sat in the car, and from the car ride, that was my first ever anaphylactic reaction. From the car ride home, from the dealership to home, which was probably like 10-15 minutes, I full on shock. Like, I got home and I was barking like a seal for air, trying to like
Oh God.
breathe, and my mom had to inject me for the first time. And that's when we started to realize, like, okay, the sensitivity level is a little bit much.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then another time I was in like daycare at the gym that my mom worked out with another little kid who had peanut butter and toast for breakfast, and it was kind of all over him. And we were like
Wow.
sharing crayons and coloring, and I wiped my eye, and the
Ah.
next thing I know, my face is like huge, and
Wow.
my throat closes. So it's hard because I have to. One thing about this pandemic that I'm not mad about is the whole mask thing. Because, for instance, when I fly or I go to Disneyland or I go to really public places, I wear a mask anyway for that reason. So it's been kind of cool to see everyone else have to
Yes.
do it for once.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to speak that over the world to have that
No,
forever, because it
I
is
get it though.
frustrating. But yeah, I think there are certain things that I just have accepted too. Like, I'm probably not gonna ever go to a baseball game because obviously there's nuts everywhere. Not that I would really want to be honest, so it's fine. But there's just certain things I have to do a little differently. Like, airplanes are a big struggle because there's only two airlines that, at least in the US, that are nut free if you need
Wow.
them to be, but they're not really nut free. They're they fight you. So it's frustrating because
Wow.
when I fly, I always fly Delta. And if you tell them ahead of time that you have a peanut allergy or a tree nut allergy, most of the time they'll just not serve it on the flight. But the thing that happens that's hard is sometimes they'll serve other nuts, not like peanuts, but other airborne like tree nuts.
Right.
Or oftentimes you just get people on the plane that don't understand the severity of it,
Right.
and they just open up their own anyway. So
Right.
I just fly in a mask and gloves, and I put like a sheet on the chair that I'm sitting on. Oh my gosh, my dog, sorry. But yeah, I always have to do things like that because of obvious reasons. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle just because you never really know what your surroundings are. So you have to always be thinking. But I'm hopeful that my biggest hope would be not even a cure for the food allergies themselves, just something that's going to get my immune system to not be as sensitive to nuts, because then I can go about my business normally.
Right.
And not have to take so many different like precautions. But it's definitely a struggle at times, for sure.
I mean, it's amazing. What always strikes me with you is how positive you are. Like you have this natural light about you, this buoyancy. So when did
Thank
you
you.
did the figure skating, which obviously you
Yeah.
loved and adored it. Now, did there come
Yeah.
a time that it was just natural to depart from figure skating, or do you still do figure skating?
For fun, I actually haven't been in a really long time, but I, at about 16, had a surgery on my feeding tube, and it took me off the ice for a while. And during that time, I started writing a ton of songs and spending so much time doing music. And at 14, or no, that's not true. I was 13 when I got my first guitar, but at 14, I started like leading worship and doing more and more music and taking vocal lessons and learning taking guitar lessons and stuff like that. And when I did that, it just started to get harder and harder and harder to do both. And I just started to fall way more in love with music. And it also made more sense for kind of what my body was going through at the time. So I fought it for a long time and tried to do both. Like I did shows for like another 2 years just for fun, for skating. And then I don't know, there was just like this day where it was really painful because it's never fun to kind of like hang up something that you've loved and you've done for 13 years. It was like all I knew, but something in my gut just, I prayed about it a lot. I spent so much time trying to figure out, okay, really what is my calling? And it had always been so clear and screaming at me, but I just kept being like, I'm going to do everything. Um, and I think I just finally realized like I don't want to do anything else. I want to do this all the time. I want to do this for a living, and I want to ultimately like impact people's lives with it. So started I honestly, the whole thing kind of happened on its own too, because while I was still skating, I was also learning and writing, and I was at an open mic night when my first producer saw me for the first time and kind of like took me under his wife's wing and kind of was like, okay, if you want to make an album, like let's do it. And I was kind of like, what? I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do that. So my first album, we actually started at 17. I came out when I was 19. And I wasn't expecting any of that. I was expecting to go to college. So I knew where I was going to school, everything, my application was done. And then he offered the recording contract, and I was kind of like,
whoa,
what if I take a gap year and do this? Which the gap year ended up turning into my full-time career forever.
The rest of your life.
Yeah, it just happened that way. But I'm kind of glad in a way that it did, because I would have been going to school for something that I definitely would have decided that I wanted to be a musician. And to be honest, is a huge part of what I do every day that turned into that, because what I wanted to go to school for was trauma therapy, to become a therapist. And I've kind of learned in telling my story and in doing music, it's like a whole other form of connecting with people, and kind of it is therapy for the world in a way.
Yeah,
but yeah, it took a while to figure out, but I always knew, like my grandparents are musicians. So my grandma's a concert pianist, and my grandpa, who just passed away, he was a gospel opera singer. So there was always music. And I always like just idolized them and wanted to be like them and follow in their footsteps, which has been so cool lately to see kind of after my grandpa passing, just there's so much of him in me. It's insane. So it's been really cool to continue like on his legacy with music as best as I possibly can, because he was really great and I never heard a voice like his in my entire life. But yeah, if you like opera music at all, or you like if you like Pavarotti, you would definitely like my grandpa.
I'm not going to lie to you. It wouldn't be my first. I'm more probably like Southern rock, Americana.
Yeah. It's an acquired taste. It was funny because so many of arguments that happened between me and my grandpa too, because he's the one that ultimately taught me how to sing. And he was always training me to breathe from your diaphragm, obviously, and all these lessons. But in every singing lesson with him, every time I would sing with him in church, he'd always be like, enunciate. And I'd be like, I want to sing country music. And it was so funny because as I've gotten older, I've had to use so much of like what he would tell me, because I have a twang. I don't know why it comes out that way. Honestly, I've never labeled myself as a country artist. I just put singer songwriter on everything because I write in a lot of different genres. But yeah, it's always been interesting because I'm like, wow, all those lessons of enunciate really mattered, because now the producers are saying the same thing.
Oh, right. I've done all sorts of in and out of vocal classes, and I remember one of the teachers at MI, which is Musicians Institute in Hollywood. She said you put a pen in your mouth and then you do all of your singing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So that that's going to make such a good freeze frame. If anybody, they could blackmail me with the freeze frame of the
freeze frames. They're the worst. Especially when YouTube picks them for you.
Right.
Oh Lord, they never pick good ones of me.
I feel sorry for the celebrities when they catch them, because they're just normal people. I think this 2021, it's becoming now, we're really in the era where it's not good to be a celebrity anymore. I feel it's a phase that's just going out now. I think celebrities aren't going to want to be famous anymore because it's too toxic and a dangerous place for people to have that kind of celebrity. I think just work on your craft, bring your talent, and don't pursue the fame aspect of it.
I've never understood. Like, I get that there's a certain level of like accomplishment, and obviously it helps a lot to be able to release music and automatically have millions of people listening to it. But I think fame has always scared me because it's like, I only have like 14,000 followers on Instagram. Half of those I'm pretty positive are like not real because there's weird bots that follow you and stuff.
Right.
But when they do, just the messages I get, I'm like, if you're a famous person, you're getting way worse on a daily basis. So I'm just like, I don't know how. You have there's no privacy, number one, but number two, there's just no filter on what you're going to see about yourself. And that's sad because a lot of people who have like image issues with themselves and confidence issues, like, you're just constantly on display for anyone's opinion, which is really detrimental to your health.
It's starting to get, I think, a little bit more sensitive, a tiny bit more sensitive as far as body image and stuff. But the trouble is, what's also escalated though is the quick attack and the cancel culture and stuff. I think, I was from the world of comedy, and I think it would be a terrifying world to be in right now, I think, to be a comedian.
Because it's how do you even, there's so many things too that are so off limits, like that. It's like, how do you, like, even COVID, how do you make jokes about it? Because
it's your job as a comedian. Job is to make jokes.
I think the world would be a really depressing place without comedy, because if I'm having a bad day, the first thing I do is like go on Netflix and find someone's comedy special, because I love bringing humor to the crazy parts of life. But I would imagine that would be a very difficult job. Because you're always being funny for everyone else, but like, what if you're really struggling? That's hard.
I know. Well, also, I think what's really biting a lot of comedians in the butt right now is that the world has changed so very quickly because of social media. It's been on hyperdrive for cultural change, because news is instant and people's reactions instant, and their means of being able to express themselves online is instant. So change happens very quickly because and the world is being held accountable, which is a good thing. We're seeing a great deal of good change. But for comedians, the significance is they could have done a joke 5 years ago that would have been fine, but now is not fine. And I think that's so true. That's what's dangerous. Like, did you watch Kevin Hart's special by any chance on Netflix?
I've seen one of them, but I think there's two now, right? I saw the one with the raccoon, and it was so funny.
I saw his latest one, which is why it came to mind because of COVID. Because he actually, I thought, when he did the special and he started to talk about COVID, and I was like, how is he?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Really good. And
oh my gosh, I love the one with the raccoon so much.
Well, I don't think I've seen the raccoon one.
Oh my gosh.
I have to see the raccoon one now.
Just look up, like, I don't know if it'll be under like Kevin Hart raccoon bit, but oh my gosh, it's so funny. Well, it's so funny.
Yeah, I will definitely look that up, because I was very impressed with his COVID special, and bless him, he did it with like everybody so far away, which is really hard for a comedian, and especially with comedians in mass, with the audience in mass, because you want to see, you want to see the smile, and all you're seeing
That's
So
hard.
we're not getting the feedback to be able to play the room, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, but he talked about getting COVID, which he calls the vid, and so check out Kevin Hart's special on Netflix because it's very, very funny about her getting COVID. And so the music. So you started to write, and you got very quickly discovered, and you got a record deal then, by the sound of it, which is amazing. And so, how has this progressed? And if you need to go and
telling my dad to shut my dog up. Sorry. But yes, it was hard because from day one, the situation I was in was so rare. It's not very often that you just start doing something and then automatically start recording an album.
yeah,
But it was a tiny, like, independent label, so I pretty much did all the promotion and anything like that. That was all on me, but which is why it didn't really go anywhere, to be honest, the first album. But thankfully I had an awesome producer and team who just kind of like poured into me, and I was already part of a band, so they played on most of my album at the time as well. But as I've gotten older, the music has changed a lot in the sense of, you just become a better writer and you learn a lot as an artist, and also just your standards are higher. Like, for instance, I played on a lot of my first album and I hate it for that reason because like now I play guitar so that I can accompany myself on stage.
right.
I do not play guitar to be the greatest guitar player.
Right.
So like nowadays I would never be the one to play on something I release. I would bring in an incredible musician to do so. So it's just it's like nails on a chalkboard listening to it sometimes because I'm just like, why didn't you use a click track, number one? Number two, oh my gosh, like there's just certain things that you learn along the way that you wouldn't allow once you know the difference of, but that's what it's supposed to sound like. But I didn't know any different, and I didn't have the ability to do anything vocally that I try to do now either. So it just grows and it changes, and I'm kind of in a really weird transitional phase right now because I'm gearing up to release more music and figuring out what genre do I want to release it in. What am I, because there's so many. I've written so much, and it's all very important to me, but I think the thing that I'm going to always continue to do as an artist is just be very mission driven. So I like to take like subjects that I find really important to bring light to and write about them, and then do something to partner with an organization or a cause to bring that to the forefront of the song and the movement, which I felt really lucky to finally be able to do with my song Better Is Coming after years and years of pitching that idea to a million different people. I finally partnered with Airy by American Eagle, and we made that video to just show that it's okay to be different and to show people what it's like to be a disabled person, but to show them that in a very encouraging way and show people that there's so much more to that story than just sort of this like sub story that they've created around like tokenism with disabled people and stuff like that. And so it was so important to me to pick real people for that video that I knew or that I've mentored or that have mentored me to be in it, because I really wanted to tell their stories. So I'm so happy with that video, and I'm just trying so hard to get it out there so that more people can just see it and relate to it. But I'm also working on other projects soon where mental health is definitely the next one that I'm tackling with my song Novocaine. And I think I'm nervous about that one because you have to be real. It's funny that you said that about hearing my song and me talking about mental health, because that was the second time actually that I had ever really played that song live. And I was so scared because that's probably the most honest song I've ever written. Talking about depression is hard, and there's such a like stigma around it. So I was so nervous on how that, because it's just brutally honest. I was so nervous on how that song was going to be perceived by people, because you never know, but it was so encouraging to me after that process, and it's the reason I keep playing it everywhere, because the people that relate to it and the people that come up after and are like, I felt that was me, that was my story.
Yeah.
And it's important not to, for me, when I wrote that song, it's very easy because I tend to always do this, try to make things have such like a rainbow positive twist, because that's sort of been my survival method. And it also is what I believe in. Like, I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and I don't think that God makes mistakes. So when bad things happen, I think there's a purpose for them. But for a song like Novocaine, it's really important for me to not always end it on this perfectly happy note, because things around mental health, they're not roses and butterflies. It's a journey. So what I want people to get out of specifically that song when it's done is just that it's okay to not be okay, that it's okay to have a bad day, let alone some people months, years. But that's why it's taking me so long to finish that, because I really, really want to do it right. And I want people to be able to relate to that feeling, because it's real. And there are things I said in that song that I don't even know that I've ever been able to verbalize out loud in real life. So it's so cool it's been therapy for me, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I felt that way with songwriting. I've got a few deep ones that talk about not being here anymore. You know, there's one I wrote with an artist, an LA artist called Hannah Ferber, who's an amazing singer, and hope to release that one this year. And it's called Captain Kirk. And in the chorus, the lyrics are "Beam me up." And I was working on it with her, and I was writing the words and she was singing. And to me, that meant, you know, I wish I could be Captain Kirk and I could say, "Beam me up." And at first, I think she didn't realize what I was saying with it, you know. But I tried to sing that song. I was in the program at MI, and I tried to sing it a couple of times, and I couldn't stop sobbing because I was going through stuff. Yeah.
So
have you had that when you've tried to sing a song and you've cried?
There's certain songs that I'm like, dude, I'm gonna need like therapy sessions to be able to sing live, because Novocaine was one where I was scared, because I remember walking into the co-write that day when we wrote that song, and just I was so mentally not in a good place. And I thankfully the people I was writing with, Richard and Warren, they know what that space is like to be in. And so I pulled that chorus and that some of those verses out of my notebook and started to sing them, and I was so scared to show them to anyone, because I felt like it was so raw. And there's things like, it's just, there's parts of that song that are so out of like character for me, of what the sort of like image that I've created around my brand. So when I say things like, if I did drugs right now, I'd be using, for instance, as lyrics in the song, and that's just honest, that's raw, that's not something, it's not like, I think, I'm not promoting doing drugs by any means, but I'm saying that when that's what it feels like when you're in that low of a place where you're like, I would do anything to get to feel something. And I think, I don't know, it's hard, because that song it's easier for me to play now, because I'm just do it like I'm telling a story, because it's my story. But I recently wrote one. There's been songs that are hard. Like my grandpa on my dad's side, when he passed away, I wrote a song called Your Song that was for him. And that took a long time to be able to play. And I play it so much now that it's easier. But recently my other grandpa passed away, and I wrote him a song that I actually just finished yesterday. And I have no idea how I'm ever going to be able to get that song out, because I can't even, like, just talking about it, I like start to choke up. So I don't know how I'm going to pull that one off. But I think I've noticed that there's been moments in my life, like for instance, singing at his funeral, where you literally have no strength in you to do the thing that you need, but for some reason something takes over. Whatever you believe that is. For me, it's always just been, I believe that God gives me the strength to get certain messages out that I don't feel strong enough to, because it's a positive message that can reach other people, that is gonna
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely, I can tell you, one thing is for sure in my life, that nothing that I do is on my own strength. There's been times where I'm like a complete hot mess, and I just feel like something else takes over and good comes from it, because I just can't do it on my own. But I think that's different for everyone too. Like, there's certain things that just help you get through, that are kind of like your weapons.
Mm.
And you go into every battle with those things, and I would say lean into those things, because you never know like what can help someone. And with Novocaine, that was the case. The thing that I thought was my weakness ended up being a strength to help other people. So I'm so here for that. I hope that also, as performers, we can be vulnerable, because when we are and we allow ourselves to go to that place, that's when people are moved. If we just pretend to be something all the time, pretend to be happy, I don't think that would have, I think if I would have gone and played one of my happier songs that day, there would have been people in the room that would have felt more isolated. Um, so I'm so here for just being real.
Yeah.
I don't like That's part of the reason I have such a hard time with social media, because I love using it to do good and to connect with people, but it's so detrimental to your mental
Oh
health.
my God. Yeah.
I don't know if have you seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
Is that
It's
the
a
one? I've
it's a
seen a
documentary.
documentary recently. I don't know if I think I saw an HBO one though, that was where they made someone famous as an experiment.
Oh no, I haven't seen that
That
one,
was
but I need to
brilliant.
watch
Oh,
that.
it was
But
fantastic.
there's one just called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix, and it's things that I feel like everyone already knows, but it just brings a light to how much social media is purposefully controlling our lives and
Wow.
manipulating our minds into like just making people more money by staring at a screen all day and comparing ourselves to everyone. And after watching it, it was so hard not to I'm not a cancel culture kind of person. I'm not
Mm,
about that. But I was so hard in my mind to just not delete the apps after watching it, because I was like,
yeah.
the only way to fight this is to step back, because it's literally like there's algorithms reading
Oh,
our
I
every
know. I
move.
know. I know.
Um
Yeah,
I
you're
could be
right.
talking about recently, I was talking about something, like I needed some kind of appliance or something. I forget, it was something in the kitchen, like a cheese grater or something. And literally, like, I'm having a conversation with someone, and like an hour later, I'm on my phone and cheese graters start coming up in my algorithm. How does that happen?
You're the third person in just a couple of weeks that has told me that something freaky has happened like this. Another
Yeah.
friend of mine was on Facebook, and he was
Mhm.
talking to someone about maybe changing banks and going to Bank of America. And a
Mhm.
Bank of America ad came up like 5 minutes later that he had never seen before. I mean, even at home, I bought some naan bread this is my level of
Yeah.
cooking, is naan bread that I can, and it was, I think the brand was like Stonefire or something. And I'd been talking about it, going, oh, this looks really nice quality naan bread. Let
Yeah.
me cook this. Let me put it in the toaster oven, which is a very big deal for me. And I will
Same here.
use the word cook for naan bread. So like days later, though, an ad came up on the television for this exact naan bread, like so
Ugh.
specific. We were like local grocery stores. And my partner's like, that's freaky. Like, where
So
we don't have
scary.
an Alexa, but
Yeah.
we have Siri on the phone. It's like, it's creepy.
Yeah, no, and
Definitely creepy.
I always thought like people that were like, that's because they're listening, were like conspiracy theorists. But then I watched this documentary and I'm like, holy cow, there are literally rooms full of people and computers that
Oh,
are legitimately listening
oh,
and programming
oh my
our
God.
algorithms to look like those things. So I was like,
Oh,
that's scary. But it's kind of eye-opening too, because it can be used for good. And that's what a lot of the people in the documentary were saying, is when we invented like the Facebook like button, we didn't invent it for bad. We invented this for a good and to be a positive thing, and it just turned into something so twisted.
Yeah.
To the point where it's literally they're feeding off of how addicting phone screen time is.
Oh God.
And it's scary. Like
Yeah.
you don't think it's affecting your mental health until, like, me, a person who literally partners with a company that's all about body positivity and anti-eating disorders and all these things, and literally I see my algorithm all the time, and I'm on there, like, and I do it all the time. Like, you don't realize you're comparing yourself to other people. You're thinking, well, I look like that, or maybe I should wear something like that, or maybe and then you're like, sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, whoa, that escalated really quickly. Like, how did you go from having a good day to having a negative one so quickly? And it's because we're feeding ourselves things that aren't really real.
Do you think you have a phone addiction?
I think for sure. I think that I spend, especially since the pandemic, because it was different when I had a lot more places to go. Now it's like we're all in our house, and like I would say my biggest downfall is TikTok, because I just love watching. There's all these dog videos,
well, fantastic.
And
TikTok's great.
Now the algorithm knows that I love dogs, so it just keeps feeding me dog videos.
I have 12 hours of Chihuahua puppies.
It's
like
so
you reach into the quiet.
And I mean, it's a positive thing, but it's like too much of any good thing is still not good.
Right.
So I'm trying to learn. After watching that, I've started like, okay, you're gonna plug your phone in the other room or on the other side of the room, and set like times for how.
Good luck with
the
that.
hard part is, I know, and the hard part though is like with us, we are also running a music business, and all of it, now that quarantine has happened, is literally on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's like every time, like I remember all my friends watched that documentary first, and in talking to all of them, they are like, yeah, I deleted my Instagram, I deleted my Facebook this week. And like, I can't do that. Like I could, but it would be the end of my business. So it's hard, because it's like they've trapped us into a situation where we have to be a part of it, but it's just to the level that it affects your mental health that I'm trying to kind of take more control of, because it gets bad. You see so much that you're like, that's the other thing about social media that's hard, is like it just reminds you of things that you don't need to know when it's your ex's birthday. Like, who wants to know that? Like, I didn't need that reminder today, but like, thanks. It's just things you're kind of like, why did I need to know that? Like, why did I need to know that this is happening right now? Or I don't know. It's just things where you're just kind of like, it might be healthier to not see these things all the time.
Yeah, somebody said the other day, because Facebook had put up a picture and it was like, Natalie, 11 years ago today.
Yes!
And I was on a sizzler.
Why?
Painting a wall mural in Marina Del Rey, because I'd opened a gallery 11 years ago, and I had $65 was like the budget for opening the gallery. So my partner and I did everything, and I did all the murals on the front and everything. And I'm looking at it, and I sent it to my family, and I'm look at me up on a scissor lift 11 years ago. And somebody said an interesting comment though. They said Facebook now has really got grips on your mental health, because they're flashing exactly what you just said. They're flashing up memories that you may not want. I mean, what if it's literally you and an ex celebrating from years ago, and it's some old picture?
I mean, sometimes I'm really grateful for it. Like, sometimes it'll remind me of things. Like, I was having a terrible day and just had gotten a lot of no's, like we do in the industry sometimes. A lot of like, this isn't your opportunity, it turns out, kind of situations. And something came up on my feed, and it said like, however many 5 or 6 years ago today you were here. And I was just like, it was an incredible reminder for me of like, every time I start to beat myself up, like, this is how far you've come in this amount of time, this is what you were doing. Like, the people that you're working with now wouldn't have even answered your email at that time. Like, no one would give you any time of day at that time. You wouldn't give yourself the time of day at that time. So I just like, sometimes it's really good reminders, but sometimes it's just stuff where you're just like, really? I I was having a good day, and then you had to come and tell me all these things. But I think it does make for good songs, so there's that at least. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the trauma becomes the healing for ourselves and others, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think on the I guess I don't know, am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes, absolutely.
I just had a question for you, like on the side of sort of like music and mental health and that kind of thing. What do you find when you're having really bad days where it's like the kind where you're like, I don't really want to get out of bed today? What do you find is the most therapeutic for you? Like whether it be music or it be like working on your own or doing, I know you're an artist, stuff like that. Like what's your favorite outlet?
100% writing poems, longhand in a book.
So cool.
If you see that little colored note stack of books there.
Yeah.
So I have loads of those there. And I've 3 years ago specifically started buying this one brand of books, the Lectern. It was when the bullet journal phase happened. And the reason I like it is because they can look tidy. Whereas before, when I was a comedian, I'd have all these different notebooks of different sizes and it was like, looked like hoarder's paradise of notebooks. But now it looks quite tidy. But I mean, the poetry's really been a blessing to me. The way that when I went through, it's so weird. Did you see that shake? I don't know if it even shows up on Zoom, the shake. Maybe because I'm wearing a back. Oh, no, I shook.
I thought you meant there was an earthquake. I'm like,
no. Like I shake, but it catches me off guard because I'm not feeling traumatized or triggered, but when I talk about it, body knows, hence that book, why I need to even listen to it over again. The body keeps the score. My body knows. My body will shake pretty harshly. So even just talking about things, the neurons will fire and make me have a physical reaction. But in 2001 was very, very bad for me. And I went through a very suicidal phase. And it was when I had a first round of serious trauma counseling. And that was when all the artwork came out, the abstract art. And then when I had the more recent round in my life of re-traumatization, I couldn't look at the monitors. And so I wanted to express myself. I don't currently have an art studio, but I was able to write longhand. So I started to write in poetry books. And it was so healthy and it was quite hellish going through it. And sometimes, I mean, I feel very horrible sometimes, no doubt about it, as I know you do as well. We're just open about it now. It's part of who we are. It's part of our life story. And it's very unpredictable and it can come kind of like the weather where some days are just hard. But now my default is just, I'll go and I have a weighted blanket on my bed, which really is soothing. And my safe zone is to go and be under the weighted blanket, sometimes with the dog. The dog will come with me. And I'll get the poetry book and I just start writing stream of consciousness. And and that's how I used to do my abstract painting, is bypassing the thinky brain so that the words come through you rather than out of you. And this, for me, I'm very grateful of this process because it's always very surprising to me what comes out. I feel like I'm getting the present on the paper. Because I don't set out to write a certain thing. It's like what words are going to come out. So it's always a little bit exciting, but it's a wonderful way. Because as you know, with writing, you can really say anything. I mean, the amount of times I've written and overtones of suicide. I mean, I wrote something yesterday. Somebody reached out to me from the songwriting conference. You know how they said, oh, you guys should all go on this app. We should write sometime.
Oh, yeah. I haven't tried it yet, but I want to.
So I put my songwriting alias is Blue Brio, and I put myself up, and somebody reached out with a prodigy child, a young man that writes incredible piano music, and he's like a prodigy. Cool. Yeah. And so I said, we had a Zoom, and I was like, well, I tell you what, I'll write some lyrics inspired by our Zoom. And he had some things that he dealt with in his life. So we sort of connected that life had a flaw. war in it that we were both dealing with. So I wrote,
so
but
cool.
even I'll just see if I've even got them right here. And, it's like this permeates the writing. It's a little poem. Hold on, see if I can bring up the lyrics, because I wanted to see how often. Oh, here they are. So the lyrics start, it's like, Mr. Sunshine, hard to find sometimes when I hear the words being said, the ones from inside my own head. Mr. Sunshine, don't you know I still find, even when I go to bed, the words still linger, likely fed on all the pictures on my screen of people trying to be seen. Why are they dying to be seen? Oh, shine on, Mr. Sunshine, can't I climb on all those beams that shoot to heaven, where the temples are all kept? Then I can shine on, Mr. Sunshine, let me ride on all those beams that shoot to heaven. Can't you offer me redemption?
Wow.
But what's in there? What am I talking about? I'm saying, can I kill myself? Can I climb on those beams that go to heaven? And just so people know, this song has a happy ending, because I literally have to think, God, I don't want to have this song that's like making people going, you know what? Why don't I go and join Mr. Sunshine? Because, but these are the words that are coming out, because you and I live our life with a veil that's like almost invisible of how we feel and how we operate in our life. And that's part of becoming the artist's journey, is to break away those social confines and the plaster cast that we all are confined in, of the society that says, don't express, don't stand in a grocery store line and cry. We don't do that in our society. Don't cry in public. Don't randomly cry in public. We don't do this. And then the more you get immersed in dropping the veils down of social conditioning, is more that it's like, I feel this way right now. I don't know why, but if I express it, probably it's not going to come across as a normal thing in society. And this is where songs are born. This is where movies are born, and television is stories that are in fact universal, like pain and trauma and crying and depression, that now, thank God, people like you, are sharing. So the end of this song, so it carries on. Let's see. Right. So we got, can't you offer me redemption? Right. So the next verse, Mr. Sunshine, help me go blind from all the news I see of what the world's starting to be. I even put my phone away, turned off my Instagram to pray, but still those words began to say, oh, shine on, Mr. Sunshine, can't I climb on those beams that shoot to heaven, where the temples are all kept? Then I can shine on, Mr. Sunshine, let me ride on those beams that shoot to heaven. Can't you offer me redemption? Then the bridge is, I said, please don't hide. And in my tears, you replied, don't you know your small screens lie? I've been here forever, and I never leave your side. And when I've helped you grow the most is on the days you've cried. Oh, I shine on. One day I will climb on all those beams that shoot to heaven, where the temples are all kept. Then I will shine on. I can wait my time to ride on all those beams that shoot to heaven, because I'm earning my redemption.
That's so good.
But how funny, it's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
That's so crazy that it's like you said, it's something that so really is universal, and everyone is feeling in some type of way, but we're taught to like not talk about it, or that it's not acceptable. But it's cool because the art that we create is what's making people feel seen, which is such a cool purpose to have, because we get to turn our own pain into something so useful and so beautiful.
Medicine.
Yes.
Medicine.
Yes. It really is. I wish doctors would prescribe songs sometimes.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because you'd said earlier that you had near-death experiences, and one of the origins of my podcast is I had a near-death experience that was very life-changing. so sci-fi, like so sci-fi that if
Yeah.
I had not had witnesses, I would have never been able to talk about it because people would have assumed that I was nuts. But thank God I
Yeah.
had people with me. But my blood pressure crashed and
Yeah.
I went like icy cold and I lay
Yep.
down on a couch and we just thought I had food poisoning or something. And I kind of was drifted a little bit, like resting. And then I started to speak scientific information.
What the heck?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so
exactly.
cool.
For about 45 minutes, but it was all super profound, very like detailed stuff about
Yeah.
science and physics and the way the world works, the way our bodies work. And it was really detailed and I saw images. So I spent the next 16 months researching all the stuff. And I wrote like a 20,000 word document on all the information that had come through me during the experience and for a few days after. Well, the big message, there was two big messages really. Sound heals everything. And music is the key. Now, this was before I got into songwriting. I was full on comedian, you know, so music was not a part of my life. So I researched and I went the scientific route and the sound healing. I went into in great depth. I studied in Glastonbury in England and did like sound singing bowls and tuning forks. Well, they use those now with autistic children in the UK to great success. The tuning forks really help autistic people suffering with autism. And that's like astounding. Oh, I have to get it. Wait. I've got them right behind me. Hold on. I'll give you a quick tune.
I'm so excited.
Hold on. You get to see my sexy shorts.
That's okay. I'm in them too.
My sexy shorts and my socks. Okay. So that you will know, being a musical person, you know what the perfect fifth is, right?
Yeah, I think.
So the perfect fifth, well, you know, like C, D, E, F, G on the musical scale, all that sort of stuff. Well, the fifth is when it's 5 apart. So like a C and D. So it goes C, D, E, F, G. Yeah. So there you go. 5. So I'll play them on here now. I've done this before on the podcast and I love it. This sound is scientifically proven to heal your body by way of releasing nitric oxide into your bloodstream, which acts like a little police force that goes through your blood, sweeping away debris basically and stuff that shouldn't be lurking in your blood. And this is just a simple combination of 2 sounds.
That sounds amazing.
Oh my God, I love it.
I wish I could listen to that like all the time.
When my aunt had, she had stage 4 cancer and I spent 5 months in Canada with her and I would do these tuning fork like healings on her and it was incredibly powerful. She was in so much anxiety and you would see all of the anxiety drift out of her face.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, I mean, these aren't that expensive either. I have a whole set. It's called like a harmonic set. They come in a cute little bag. But talk about, in fact, I'm going to leave them out because I've got so much issues. I need to be taking my anxiety down because of the PTSD. And like you, I'm spending time on my phone.
Yeah.
Because I love it. I won't lie. When I go to bed at night, there's something that's really feels cozy and safe to be under the weighted blanket, looking at my phone. I'm in control of it. I'm in control of this tiny device. And I'm aware, though, that something very unhealthy is going on, that I'm even starting to think this is definitely in addiction territory now, because it keeps being suggested to me by health professionals, don't take your phone to bed. And I'm like, don't even go there.
I know. I'm like, don't make me do that.
Don't make me do this. But it's like, that's not healthy that I can't not take my phone to bed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
that's so true.
That's an addiction.
Right.
That's an addiction. So
it's so hard to like to fix that too. But I think if I like do it in increments and I just like spend a little less time on it every day, I'll eventually get there where it's like, these are my times I can be on it, and
Right.
these aren't.
Well, this has been an epic. I never dreamed we would be this long on the podcast. I was like,
Thank you
thinking,
so much for having me. It's so good to finally get to connect with you again too. I hope we can write soon.
I would love to write with you. And what's great now is with Zoom, it's taking the small blessings out of COVID, out of so much tragedy and horror, is that it has connected people in ways that we weren't connected before. I mean, I just wrote with someone from Nashville. Now, I would have never written with someone from Nashville because Zoom was not accepted as a way to write a song before. But we must get together on Zoom. We'll text the second this podcast ends. We'll set up a collab. But thank you so much. Please tell me, where's all the socials that we can hear you music? Where can we follow you?
So you can find me under any social media platform under Kendall Renee Music. And also my music is all under Kendall Renee. And I'd love it if everyone would check out my YouTube with my new music video called Better Is Coming.
Great.
I really, really, really hope it brings some light and hope to your day.
I think I might. Is that the one where you go into hospital and you meet a little girl who has a little tube as well?
Yes.
I
Sammy,
saw that video. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, that video is incredible.
Thank
so
you
I'm going to say
much.
it again for people listening. Better is coming. Look it up.
Yes.
Kendall Renee Music. And isn't those words? I'm such a believer in words and the power of words. The frequencies that words carry, which is why music is so powerful, and words.
Absolutely.
But just that title, Better is Coming.
Yes, I've been hanging on to that one.
Let those sink into your psyche right now.
Yes,
because those
please do.
three words carry a vibration that just hearing them tells your body that better is coming. I'm going to say it again. Better is coming. And you just let it sink in. That stuff changes your life in a tiny way, like a pebble in a pond.
It
Those
does.
frequencies.
And if you need to see it, I have it written here.
She's got a visual. Sorry, listeners. Better is coming. Very nice. And I knew what. And you have, I see over your doorway, believe.
Believe.
That's very lovely.
I've always had that actually for
lovely.
Almost my whole.
Oh man, I'm understocked with affirmations around me. Look at you. You've got them everywhere in your room.
I've got always stay humble and kind over there.
That's a nice one.
There's an original above my bed that was from my first album, but I like words. That's probably why I'm a songwriter.
But I think they're powerful as well. These affirmations. It's like, I mean, you're younger than me, and I'm only just realizing the power of words and the power of saying little things. When earlier on you were talking about your techniques with trauma, which I'm all ears. I'm like, what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
And what was you said 3 things. It was, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm
present. Yeah, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm present. I always say that to myself a lot when I'm going through those, either about to have a flashback or it's already happening.
I need that one a lot. I'm here, I'm safe, I'm present. I need that one a lot. So
it's so helpful.
Yeah. We're ending on a high note of empowerment.
Yes.
Better is coming.
Yes, always.
And the reason better is coming is you're part of that recipe. So I want to give you major props for living an open and authentic life. And you have no airs and graces. You put up no filter of, hey, things are perfect. You're like, hey, things are not perfect.
No. Yep.
That's you're like,
goal.
Your neon sign is things are not perfect.
Yes.
And I just
that's
think
what I try.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you're beautiful inside and out. You're a lovely person to know. And I feel really honored and privileged that I got to see you perform in Colorado, and then that we started to get to know each other and learn that we share these
I'm so grateful we did. Because I honestly needed that conversation as much as anyone, because I was questioning, should I have played that song? Was it too real? Was it too much? So to have people connect to it, it just truly reiterates and makes me feel more comfortable as an artist, knowing okay, this could help people. This connects people, and I'm not alone.
I have 2 words for that song. The first one, memorable. and the second one of your performance relevant. And I feel when you sung that song, we had a big crowd of people in that giant hotel conference room in Colorado, and you could sort of cut through the air when you went up to do that song, because
so cool.
It was just riveting. Like, and you just like opened up talking about the mental health, and it was sort of the point in the evening where the guard dropped down a little bit more raw.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, a lot of the musical performances, and there's so much talent in the songwriters in, you know, in the festival and everything. And, a lot of the songs, you got happy songs, you got sad songs, and then yours I just felt was a nice, it of course is relevant to me, so my ears perked up, but it's like, I love to hear when people drop the guard down, and it's what I strive to do in my own work. Don't pretend things are perfect. How open and honest can I be about how imperfect things are?
That's the
and
goal.
That's the task.
Because that's what changes people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Well, thank you for your time. I will, I'm just going to say an official thank you, Kendall Renee.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, hopefully we'll see you soon. There you go. I think it's a lovely thing to think better is coming, and what a beautiful thing to write a song about. Thank you so much again, Kendall Renee, for joining me on The Grey Escape. I really felt nourished having that conversation with you. I felt a great connection, and I feel that it's offering something to the people listening to this show, watching now on YouTube. Let's get those walls down about talking about mental health. Look at me, by the way. Look at me. I'm looking at myself in the Zoom. I look horrible. I am so tired. Sleep deprivation is just engulfing sometimes, with so much on my mind and so much going on in the world. I know I don't say this as an isolated individual. So to my peeps out there who are having trouble sleeping right now, I feel you, right? It's tough. However, I'm going to adapt Kendall Renee's suggestion of grounding, which is those 3 words I've already been telling my loved ones. Okay, I'm here, I'm safe, and I'm present. Nice big breath. Oh, that feels good. You know what else I can do spontaneously? I still have my tuning forks here. Maybe I'll give you a free close. Look at for those tuning in on YouTube, you get the fabulous bonus of seeing how utterly un-television worthy I am today. I am truly the face of radio today, right? With my black under eyes from sleep deprivation and scraggy hair, COVID haircut. It's been a year now. Me and my boyfriend cutting my hair. I think it's starting to show. I won't lie. But I mean, it's still kind of, we're coming out of it, right? We're coming out of it, but we're really not there yet. Okay, here, let's end on a little healing perfect fifth. Oh, that's not the perfect fifth. Okay, this is C and a B. So this is a horrible dissonant interval. But you're going to hear the difference now when I find my right tuning fork. Okay, here we go. It's the right one. Oh, check that out. Oh my gosh. I can only tell you, it instantly transports. That's the word. It transports you to a place where stress cannot resonate. Oh my gosh, these tuning forks are so beautiful. C and a G. Look at the bonuses you guys get at The Grey Escape. Bit of ASMR. Look, here I am. Oh, we've got the mallet on the microphone again. I love this ASMR stuff. Okay, if you have an ASMR brain, I don't know. I discovered that I do, so I really love this stuff. Okay, I'm going to get my pasty, tired, exhausted looking face out of this YouTube video. Thank you guys so much for listening in. I know most of you have been downloading the show, and I think we're starting to just get a little bit of action on YouTube. YouTube is a new thing for me. I've never promoted it. But the world's changing now, and we're becoming more accustomed to video because of Zoom as well. So if you feel that you may connect more by watching a video, then just go to YouTube. The channel's The Grey Escape. It's the exact same interviews as you are listening to since COVID hit, except there is the video. So you can see my little studio where I work from. You can see the bags under my eyes, which maybe they'll make you feel good about yourself if you don't have bags under your eyes. I definitely don't feel good about myself looking at my face in this Zoom. Maybe I'll make more effort next time. But you know what? This is progress, because it's part of the losing of control that things have to be perfect. Okay? So if I was going to wait for things to be perfect, this video wouldn't happen, because look at me, right? But I'm conquering it. So here's the video. And if I can make progress, that means you can make progress, and we can make progress together. We're in it together. Thank you all. ASMR on my heart. Look, that's my hand on my heart. Going out to you, sending you good vibes, saying thank you for listening. And I'll catch you right here real soon on The Grey Escape.